The information revolution has almost indisputably been a net positive for leftist politics. The internet and neoliberal decline are coming together at the perfect time for a new boost to the Western left to an extent never seen since the early 20th century. Spotify, Twitch, and Twitter have all in various ways offered outlets for the left to grow. Leftists are also founding their own media groups with independent platforms from any existing media companies, like Novara Media and Means TV. But no online platform has arguably been more important for the left than YouTube. Even though the electoral left is not at the same level it was in 2016, the online leftist agitprop infrastructure is at a level it has never been, at least in the United States. At this point, people are pretty much spoiled for choice. From the big media operations like Breakthrough News to Novara Media to Democracy Now! To the countless more medium and small-sized operations. This is going to be pretty controversial to say for some people, but at this point, I'd argue YouTube has a somewhat left-leaning position. Many right-wingers have been banned from YouTube, like Jackson Hinkle, Alex Jones, and Nick Fuentes. But no channel of remotely comparable size has been banned that is a left-winger, at least to my knowledge. Now, I'm not saying YouTube doesn't have its fair share of issues. As a friend pointed out to me, they were getting ads for Joe Biden while watching my videos. We're still, of course, operating within the capitalist system and its constraints, but imagine if someone like Elon Musk took over YouTube. I think leftists should be thankful a platform like YouTube isn't actively censoring them much yet, while also recognizing that other video platforms like Means TV are necessary for transition in the long term. Of course, for the time being at least, all the views are still on YouTube. All in all, my channel has had over 700k views. Not a lot in the grand scheme of things per se. I know for some big left tubers 700k on a single video is a disappointment. I'm reminded of Hassan being angry about getting only 13,000 live viewers for one of his Twitch streams, but for me this is a great feeling, to think that my videos have influenced people. They have been seen by tens of thousands, including by big YouTubers that I look up to. It got me thinking of how, in comparison to many professional academics, people who went to school for half a decade for a PhD just to have the right to publish in journals, will never get the same amount of views that I did for just starting up a YouTube channel. A huge barrier to entry for having an influence on political thought is basically gone. Online leftism is becoming something of an industry, as leftists are increasingly becoming brands, celebrities, not dissimilar to the French philosophers of the 60s, like Derrida and Foucault. Like the French theorists, the modern celebrity leftists are also diverse in their thinking and the actual quality of their thinking. The common thread that unites all of them is their strong presence on digital platforms. It is no longer just in the academy that you can make a name for yourself as a leftist thinker, but on the internet as well. There has always been stratification between the people and the elites when it comes to academia. YouTube bridges academic thought with the broader public, both for the creators of content as well as the consumers of it. This has brought a lot of idiots masquerading as leftists, of course, but it's also brought to prominence many very intelligent people that might not have had this opportunity if not for YouTube. YouTubers are thought leaders at this point. They are the intellectuals of the past. As silly as it might sound, it's true. They influence the thought of others in a way that has slight but material influences on the world around them. I don't think this is all bad. The millennial generation is very digital. Gen Z even more so. People need to adapt to the times and use the tools available to them. This brings up a question. Would Marx, Engels, and Lenin have been YouTubers if they grew up today? We can't know for sure, but I don't doubt it. Let's not pretend there's not a decent chance people like Lenin and Mao would have had a YouTube if it meant their ideas could spread easier. In the time they existed, they used the means they could to spread their ideas. Today, it's safe to assume they'd be no different. Of course, the questions remains, is all of this bringing YouTube to a higher standard or bringing academia to a lower standard? I'd probably argue it's somewhere in between. I think there's a decent possibility that universities will start to contract in size as more and more people that would have gotten a PhD take the YouTube route instead, or quit their already existing academic careers and go down the YouTube route, especially with how difficult the academic job market currently is. There are many examples of this already. FD Signifier has a PhD, PhilosophyTube has a PhD, ContraPoints quit her PhD to focus on YouTube only, John the Duncan is getting his PhD, One Dime just got his master's, and so on. Clearly, YouTube is attractive to current or former PhDs or PhDs in progress. Mind you, I'm not saying the PhD is irrelevant, but I think we've entered a world where it's going to lose more and more relevancy over time. Of course, there is still a financial barrier to YouTube as there is with getting a degree, because in YouTube, you're going to have the free time and energy to be making videos basically at a loss for a good while. There are plenty of criticisms of YouTube that are valid, but at the same time, YouTube is arguably the single greatest emancipatory leftist tool of media dissemination that has ever come out. Public left intellectuals with the popularity of Hasan or Second Thought or FD Signifier simply didn't exist a decade ago. The closest intellectual was Noam Chomsky, maybe followed by the likes of Slavoj Zizek, and behind the two of them, Michael Parenti, but the reputations of those academics took decades to build, whereas the reputation and audience of someone like Second Thought has been built pretty much in the space of a few years. Academics, meanwhile, have to spend tens of thousands of dollars and half a decade to get a degree just for the privilege to be able to publish in academic journals, which, due to a lack of attention span, lack of class consciousness, and lack of accessibility, rarely get read by anyone at all. Getting a PhD is prohibitive both financially and time-wise, and the payoff, unless you are at least moderately successful after you get your PhD, is not likely to be worth it. Of course, just like academia can lead people to YouTube, YouTube can of course work as a springboard for your academic career as well. I, for example, am considering getting a PhD in history thanks to how YouTube has rekindled my passion for talking about history. In terms of actual examples, people like Michael Brooks have come to prominence thanks mainly to YouTube, while the likes of already existing academics Michael Hudson and Michael Wolff have also had big career boosts from utilizing platforms like YouTube, and already popular academics like Parenti, Zizek, and Chomsky have all had huge boosts to their reputation thanks to the internet as well. The YouTuber Cuck Philosophies released an academic work, How to Philosophize with a Hammer and Sickle. One Dime is working on releasing a book. I am also working on releasing a book on the USSR, and if you subscribe to my $8 Patreon, you get a free copy of the book when it comes out, and also the first chapter of the book now. Anyways, at the same time, YouTube has other issues as well, having to chase trends and do the right clickbait in order to grow, but that's really not so different from academia. Academia has trends. Academia arguably has a form of clickbait in terms of titling your articles in provocative ways. Academia has an organic algorithm of sorts that determines what is worthwhile and what isn't. And that's the thing, that the algorithm, in many ways, simply rewards what people want to see. People want to put all the blame on the algorithm, but the fact is that, in the end, a lot more people just prefer to watch a MrBeast video than a video about Marxism. The biggest difference to me is that, even though you don't need as much as a financial investment, YouTube is typically also even less profitable than academia already is. A recent friend of mine, with over a 100k subs, and who makes very high quality, well-researched videos, disclosed that he makes roughly $1,000 a month, including from both ad revenue and Patreon. Yes, he doesn't release that often, but that's because he puts a lot of effort into the videos he makes. And there's the problem. A carefully crafted video that involves a lot of research and effort is generally a lot more valuable than just a stream, in my opinion. But since frequency and consistency is the most important part of LeftTube, streaming is easily the more lucrative position, by far. I know people on Twitch who have a quarter of the followers I do on YouTube, but make literally 10 times the income. In this way, YouTube is also similar to academia as it relates to the publish or perish principle. Academics have to continually publish to retain their positions or get promoted, and YouTubers have to continually release videos to maintain viewership and Patreon numbers and keep your name in the conversation, so-called. in a way that might sacrifice the quality of your actual videos. The attention economy has become insane. There are so many creators making so much content, whether it's individuals on YouTube or Twitch, or companies making games and movies and TV shows. And as such, the only way to stand out enough to make a living is a mixture of luck, intelligence, and lots of free time and energy and motivation that many people don't have the right combination of. While I think I've gotten a lot more attention on my work than if I'd gone into academia, I've also gotten a lot less money for it. In terms of value for the hours spent, my channel has been massively unprofitable. You could argue it's a long-term investment. I can make more money as I get bigger, but even if I expand 20x the amount of money I make now, that would be no more than just an alright paying job. And of course, I don't get the insurance and other things that come with having a regular job. That's why I believe freelance YouTube type jobs are best in places like Europe, where expenses like healthcare are already covered, but that's another story. I'm far from alone in this situation, of course. Despite the recent proliferation of left content online, only a very, very small amount of left tubers are really making a living from it. I think the number is a lot smaller than you might think. I think this is where it's, again, helpful to distinguish between the less radical bread tubers and the more radical beard tubers. You can debate what this distinction is, but I describe beard tubers as those that are explicitly and consistently anti-capitalist, as opposed to bread tubers being either only very subtly anti-capitalist, or just social democrats, or even in some cases left liberals. Naturally, bread tubers are more popular since they have more mainstream appeal, but pioneers like Second Thought and Hasan have arguably changed the online left, forging a space for other more openly and consistently radical content to come out in the form of creators like Best D. Marks, Yugopnik, Hakim, and Balkan Odyssey, among others. Beard tubers existed before these people, but it's only in the last few years that they've really grown to see real popularity. I think you could probably create 3 categories instead of 2, from BreadTube to BeardTube to TankyTube, but that's for another video. I think there's probably dozens of bread tubers making a comfortable enough living. You could probably count the beard tubers or tanky tubers making a 100K a year on both hands at most. Bigger outfits like Breakthrough probably make more, but talking about channels that are just run by 1 or 2 people, very few operations that small are making any real money in BeardTube. This also depends on the country, of course. Especially in South America, for example, it's easier to make a living being more explicitly anti-capitalist and Marxist than it is in the Anglophone world. But this is, of course, changing as radical content has become more and more accepted in the West. All in all, I don't think YouTube is replacing academia entirely, but I do think it offers an alternative option to many, with both positives and negatives. But in the end, more options is, I'd say, better rather than worse. If you'd like to support me continuing to create content, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a helpful comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.